All right, let's get into the quadriceps group. So quadriceps is going to be the front part of the thigh. This is all connected. So tibialis anterior will come up, connect into your patellar tendon. That's going to connect into your quadricep tendon, and then that will go all the way up into the hip. So it's important to note that the quadricep group actually wraps around the femur bone. So it's not just in the front here, it actually wraps around to the side. So when you're doing your scanning, make sure you come all the way onto the side of the thigh and all the way onto the inside of the thigh. Most of the tenderness you might find is going to be right through the middle, and that's what we call our rectus femoris muscle. This is a very important muscle if we're seated all day because it acts as a hip flexor. So that's one of the only quadricep groups that crosses the hip joint, and it's affected primarily up in this region here when we're seated all day long. So we're going to start with a foam roller for this one. I'm just using a half roll. Again, if you have a larger roll, that's fine. But basically we're going to start in a table position just like this. And what we want to do is be able to apply enough pressure onto the thigh to create that therapeutic result. So I'm going to slide this back. I'm going to straighten out my bottom leg, and now I'm going to bring my elbows down to the ground. Now when I'm here, I can now start to slide back and forth and scan. So up and down scanning. Slide forward a little further here. Scanning up and down. And now when I go side to side, I'm just going to roll my hips back and forth. Roll my hip. Internal, external rotation. So for visual sake, I can kind of bend my knee and show you what I'm doing with my leg. You can bend your knee, but I would wait until you find that tender point because that's exactly how we're going to create that internal tension. So I found a point right about mid-belly, right in the center of my thigh. So I'm going to sink into that. I'm going to relax my upper body. You can actually, if you feel comfortable, resting your head kind of on your hands here, because you don't want to be straining anything else while we're in this position. Now slowly I'm going to bend through my knee until I feel that tension increase. Then I'm going to point through my toe. From here we're going to breathe. And again, you want to get to that good hurt sensation. 5, 6 out of 10, dull, achy, spreading sensation. As you breathe, it should start to ease up a little bit. If you want to increase that tension as it eases up, totally fine. Good. I'm going to release out of that one slow, scan again. Now if we need to, we can kind of roll towards one side a little more just to access that inner part. Now usually for the middle part of the quadricep, a lot of the trigger points are going to be found down by the knee. So it's important that you kind of work all the way through that femur bone from the knee up into the hip so you find the appropriate area. Sometimes these guys like to hide out and they're not easy to find. Once I'm on my point, sink in, found a good point there. I'm going to bring that foot inward, heel towards the bottom. Now here I can just try to get into a comfortable position, resting with my shoulder and my elbow kind of stacked. If I need more pressure, I'm going to push my hip up off the ground a little bit. So my weight's primarily on my elbow and this point right here. My back knees give me a little bit of support as well. So again, once we find it, we can bend, create a little more internal tension, and we're going to come out nice and slow. Good. Now to get to the lateral portion or the outer side of the thigh, what we're going to do, again, get into our roll. Now we're going to lean more on the same side arm. Now this top leg, again, we can kind of slide out, slide in. Whatever gets us to that point, we can put our foot flat like this. Now I know not everybody's going to have enough mobility to get into this position, but you do your best and you don't want to hurt yourself in the process. So whatever's comfortable for you. And if this is way too much pressure, go back to our technique of just using your hand in the ball. Right there, found my point, now I'm going to bend the knee and hold. Find your breath. Excellent. Okay, you're gonna come out of that nice and easy. So again, if that's too much pressure, you can always get into that kneeling position, use the ball in your hand, same way that we did on the shin. So this is a good way just to wake up these muscles, get a little bit of tolerance going. So we're gonna scan. Once you find a point, we're gonna go up and down, side to side, circle one way, circle the other way, and then twist. So that's how we kind of get those tissues warmed up. If you find those tender points, before you start applying all your body weight, it's probably a good idea to just build a little bit of tolerance with the hand and the ball. Now if you want to get advanced with this, if this becomes easy for you, I recommend getting a solid medicine ball. It does not matter what weight it is, just matters that you really can't compress it a whole lot. You could also use maybe a basketball or a volleyball, which would be a little bit less density, so you can kind of work your way up to a different surface area with a softer density, just to kind of let you build yourself up to something like this. But I really like using these balls because it gives me a lot more freedom of movement to get into the outside or the inside of the leg, and depending on which area we need, I can kind of sink and get up into those hard to reach places in the upper hip there by the quadricep attachment. So here, same concept. When we're adding tension into the quadricep group, we're going to want to flex the knee and point the toe. Now if you start getting cramping or anything like that in your hamstrings, just back off a little bit. Your muscles are not used to moving in all these directions and not used to opening these fascial restrictions, so sometimes the opposite muscle group will decide to spasm while you're bending and creating that internal tension because it's just not used to it. So take your time, back off if it starts to cramp. If it's hard to get out of, just go into the opposite movement, straighten out the leg, stretch out a little bit, lift the toe up, just basically go into the opposite movement to help relieve any spasms that might happen. So this is pretty much the main tools I would use for the quadricep group. Again, like this front line can be pretty sensitive, especially when you're in the lower extremities. So take your time with these, but have fun, open things up, keep things moving. Let's move on to the next part.